Hello again. Now that I've got the rear suspension rebuilt and I've pushed it to one side, I can start focusing on some more cosmetic issues on the car. The plan is to get the bonnet off and get the engine out, but what I'm going to do first is take all the chrome off the car, bundle that up and send it off to the platers. I'm going to start off with the bonnet and take these headlamp surrounds off, but you can see that from an originality point of view there's a few things that aren't quite right. Got a flat head screws all around here, whereas actually I think there should be these crosshead domed screws, so that some of them are correct, some of them aren't. And if I go around to the other side, you can see that most of them are these dome head cross head screws, but we've got a rogue flat-headed one here that's obviously not correct. Of course, the grille vane, the bumpers and overriders and everything. So I've already put WD-40 on all of the fixings a few days ago. So now to start the strip. With the headlamp surrounds, front bumpers and splitter removed, I can now inspect them closely. So we can see here why this needs replating. That won't just polish out. We'll look across here similarly and into the overriders. I want to get these removed and that set smooth again, because this car had AMCO grille surround fitted at some point, so I want it back to UK spec, which mean filling in those holes and plating over. Have a look at the splitter here and see that the actual growler has got a bit of a stone chip at the bottom there, so I don't think that's polishable, but no, in fact it's not. And then if we look at how that's fixed in place, it's just a simple kind of spring clip that pushes on the back of it, holding it in place. The headlamp surrounds will polish up nicely, but I'm going to get them replated anyway, just to get them as good as possible. Of course, the rubbers will need replacing, and I'll need to carefully store the original glass headlamp covers and see if there's any polishing. There's a bit of a scratch there. I'd much rather keep these original ones. I've connected up all of the fixings and spacers in here, and I'll replate them as necessary. With the headlamp surround off, you can now see that the split in the bonnet, basically it's 3 main pressings, sort of 2 wings and then a big centre section. And in that split line goes this chrome pit here. So it's in effect sandwiched in, and then it's got little return tangs that kind of bend up and hold it in place. Now that I've taken the bumper and overriders off the bonnet, this spring and hinge mechanism isn't actually holding the bonnet open any longer, because those were actually counterbalancing the mechanism. So I've made myself a calibrated bonnet prop, otherwise known as a stick. So as we look inside the bonnet now, you can see the way that the panels of the bonnet are held together with these short set screws and nuts. And then this here is the chrome strip that goes down the middle on the other side. So I'm going to bend all of these out and try and carefully extract it from the other side. Now as I've opened up the gap between the panels, I'm being able to push from below to get this to come proud of the surface. I don't really want to bend this. It actually looks like in very nice condition, so I'll probably reuse this. Just carefully prising it out bit by bit. If it feels like it's not going to come, I'm not going to force it at this stage. Just carry on working from behind to open it up. And there we go. So you can see that this is all just held in place with these bits that slide up and down the channel here. So it's relatively simple, but really quite effective. And obviously as we look up the bonnet, you can see that there are spacers in there all the way to make sure that there's sufficient gap for that chrome strip. When you're taking the chrome strip out of here, of course, make sure that you don't lever against the top of the bonnet, so you could put an indentation. That's not a confession, by the way. I'm now going to tighten the nuts back up again, because of course I don't want those panels to go out of alignment when we remove the bonnet. You can undo the indicator from the outside, but the electrical connections are inside, and it's just easier to access if I take this scoop, as it's called, out first. The scoop is attached with these 3 fixings here, 1, 2, 3. Now I'm going to remove this seal around here so that the scoop's just got a bit more space to move. So it'll make it much easier getting it out. Because what I want to do is lower it down into the cavity in the bonnet there, and then feed it up back through the headlamp aperture. I'm just going to give it a couple of gentle taps to try and free up the fixings. Right, the one at the top corner here is gone now, so if I'm careful I should be able to push the scoop down. There we go. So the scoop down in here, now what I want to do is manipulate it around so that I can feed it back out through the hole. I see here that this bottom fixing has a spacer on it, so that's one to watch out for when it's being refurbished. Now I can remove the indicator from the outside, which of course means disconnecting the positive and negative connections on the inside here. Right, and with that it should just pull out. It's been on there a while. Now this is off, and so I don't lose anything, I'm going to put the fixings back in the correct order. So this short one at the back here, and then the 2 longer ones, and then put the lens back over the top so that I don't lose anything. Equally with the scoop here, I can put the correct fixings and washers on. So now that I've got access to this terminal block here, I can undo the connections and take the headlamp out. So the ring that holds the headlamp in place, this top fixing's got pretty tricky access, but you can see there's a little notch in the inside of the headlamp aperture that just about gives you enough space to the screw. Right, so now I can get hold of the headlamp, just pull the connector block off the back, and that's out. Now I've just got this adjuster mechanism that's to do with setting the angle of the headlamp and the bowl behind to remove. Let's get this adjuster mechanism off. I need to get onto this spring here because that tensions it back onto the bowl. So get the pliers on, unhook it, and the whole lot's a lot easier to manoeuvre. Then it's just the bowl left. So that's screwed with 1, 2, 3, 4 dome-headed screws from this side with captive nuts that are on the panel on the other side in the inner wing. Okay, now the bowl should be able to come free. Having noted where the headlamp connections actually go in this terminal block, I can now pull the bullet connectors out. 1, 2, and 3. Now feed it through behind, and then into there, and lift out the bowl. With access to the headlamp aperture now, I can remove that small piece of chrome trim by just freeing off those tangs on the back here. This grill at the back of the bonnet here is just for ventilation for the engine bay coming up through here. So I need to get a spanner in to hold the nut while I undo these. Before I get the side and door glass out, I'm going to take the chrome off the back of the car. So that's the bumper blades here, the tail lamps. The overriders will come off with the bumpers, and then there's these little Lucas number plate lamps, these little covers here. So that one's tarnished, and on this side, this one here has been painted at some point. So again, these can all be taken off and replated. The fixings for the rear bumper blades are in here and just under there. The final fixing is on the inside of the wheel arch here. Interesting to note the amount of washers that are being used here as spacers. Just like the front of the car, the fixings that hold this onto the body are behind these, the seals behind these lenses. So just pop these 2 screws out to get access to the flathead screws that hold it onto the body. And prise away this seal. Right, so now I need to obviously find the connections to disconnect this on the inside. There we go. This number plate light is held on with just the single screw. Just need to watch out for this glass lens here, that it doesn't drop and break when you take it off. It should all come off together. You can see one quite dirty, old, but really quite nice glass lens. And these parts, obviously that's been painted, but these need replating and they'll be fine to go back on. Just looking at this lens now that it's off the car, you'll see it's sandblasted on the inside here to help diffuse the light. I think it's a lovely little bit of design. So with the rear chrome taken off now, except for the badging here of course, I'm going to take the rear windscreen surround off. So a couple of little pieces that cover the joint. The rest should lift up fairly easily. Again, just be careful not to put any kinks in it while you're removing it, otherwise those will be showing in its re-chromed. Right, now for the badging. So I'm just going to use this basic trim removal tool to try and get underneath, there we go, get underneath the badges here, because I don't want to be damaging or putting any dents in the boot lid. And you can see, other than the dirt, there are 3 little sockets that you kind of push these prongs into, and that's all that holds it in place. But it'd be nice to retain these and not have to replace them, so we can put the original back on once the car's resprayed. Okay. Right, that's 2. So next time these go back on, the car will be a different colour. I'm not sure when that's going to be yet, but that'll be a good day when we get to that point, that's for sure. I'm now going to remove this lovely opening rear quarter glass, because when you look closely at the frame, the chrome isn't quite as good as it should be, and so it'll really show up when the car is resprayed. The way to do that is open it, lock it in position, and take the pin out of here first. Put the pin back straight back in, because I really don't want to lose that. That would be a real pain to have to replace. With this now free to swing open, I can pull it right out the way and get access to the screws that are going down here. So if I take that out, there's a bar that holds the quarter glass in place. These really are very short screws, and they're almost certainly going to fall out. So in effect, we just got within the chrome frame, there's a round bar that a whole lot pivots around, and it's just held in place by this simple chromed, slightly chamfered piece of steel. So it's a very, very simple mechanism, but extremely effective. At this curved end of this side, you can see that there's a screw missing there, and this has been wobbling around for quite a while. So I'll undo the 2 flat-headed screws at the top and bottom of this frame. That should allow this portion to slide out, and I'll be able to slide the glass out this way. I need to make sure that I carefully extract the glass lengthways from here, so feel it beginning to go, but this will expand, but I don't want to put too much expansion onto it, so ideally I'd like to slide it out lengthways. So for the last few minutes I've been trying to get in and under this seal here. This is old and brittle and falling apart, to be honest. So I've got some WD-40 in there, and with this blade I've been trying to get in there just to cut back, and you can see the frame is now lifting away from the seal, which is good. So I now need to just continue prying it out, and I've got these window suckers to hold on and actually allow me to pull it longitudinally out the frame. In fact, the frame seems to be falling away anyway, so I might just be able to push it out that way instead. Let's carry on doing that. There we go. Right, and the frame, good. You can actually see that the glass is curved. It's just got a very subtle curve on it, so you know, it is handed and needs to take great care of this. So with the glass out now, I'm going to screw this all back together again so I don't lose anything and it stays together as a set. With the glass out the way, I can now get access to the screws that are hidden underneath the seal here. This like B-pillar chrome bar. And that screws up into the roof just under here. This rubber sits in a channel here, so it's not actually glued in or anything. There we go. So you can see that there's a riveted on strip that all sits in. This long screwdriver I can now get to these two, so I can remove the B-pillar bar. Okay, out it comes. Now, important to note, there are two spacers that are here that sit on top to get the positioning of this right, the clearance right to the roof. Now I can undo these two screws that hold the quarter-light catch on. So we can see here the little angled wedge-shaped spacer that sits underneath the catch on the quarter-light glass. Of course, it's vital to keep the fixings together as well, so here they are on a tub. I'm sure this will come in useful as a reference later for fitting a new one and making sure I cut it to the right length. With the quarter-light glass out, I'm now left with the door frame and the door handle here. The frame is fixed from the inside of the door, which means I need to get the door card here off. So I've pushed this collar back and there's a little pin in there. If I push that pin through, the handle will come out. Okay, there comes the pin. And then it all springs out. Make sure you don't lose the spring with that. For the most part, the door card is just held on with clips. So if you carefully prise them away, it'll start to come. So it just holds position, the right place on the door. Okay, there we go. So there's the door card. So to get the window frame out, I've got fixings at the bottom here. I can feel it's already loose anyway. You then need to drill out the rivets on the chrome strip underneath the top roll on the door. So now to undo the two nuts at the bottom here and these screws along the top, and I can lift the frame out. A plate here that supports both of those from underneath that clamps it all in. So screw that straight back in so it doesn't get lost. See here I've got some washers that have been just cut off so that they have the right clearance underneath the frame here. So to get the frame out now, I now need to make sure that that little bolt there is out of this tab so that it doesn't prevent it pulling up. So now with any luck I should be able to pull the frame out. Okay, there we go. I'll now take the glass out. It's already detached itself from the actual regulator mechanism in there. So put this to one side carefully. A bit of rust treatment is required in here, but there's quite a lot of grease there. Now to finish stripping the door, so there's this seal here that's just held on with these 5 clips. The clips I'll try and tap out with a screwdriver. Right, so I'll do this from the outside first. What I want to do is get this out because that links up with the door handle on the outside. I now want to disengage this lever, so I've put the handle back on. That exposes this little clip. That's more like it. Okay, that's loose. So now that's loose, I need to disengage this by taking off again another little clip here that joins. This goes to the outside handle. I'm going to take this round and unclip it. There we go. Pop that off. Pull that out. Crikey, there's so much wax oil and grease on there. So now as we look through, I've got this part of the mechanism to disengage as well. It's again just another very simple clip. Pull it out. Off. I think I'll push that straight back on as well again so it doesn't get lost in where it came from. So now I need to undo these nuts that are holding the outside handle on, and hopefully pull the mechanism out. 3/8 socket on here. That was coming with no resistance at all. This one looks a bit rusty. Oh, that was a different size, that's useful. So this one is 11/32 for some reason. Right, that's off again. Those both came off really, really easily. Okay, you can see here that the handle's just scratched and pitted through age and use. And this lock barrel here, that's looking quite tarnished and old, so I need to work out what to do with that as well. Another observation I'd make looking at this is that there's what's called dum-dum, which is just like a soft putty that's been used to seal this against the door. So it's really still malleable, never sets, but if you put it in the right place and then trim the excess off, it's what helps seal the inside of this. What I'm doing is just clipping all this back together again so I have a reference before I then clean it up. So my final job stripping the door down is getting the trim off here, so drilling out these rivets, taking this plate off. That's for the interior light switch that mounts there, so that plate pushes up against that. That looks as though it's not working, so I need to sort that out, and then removing the latch mechanism and the winder mechanism there. Been in there for a while. There we go. Yeah, so it's stuck in a little bit, but really that was only the glue that was on the part when the trim was stuck on. So on the door here I've got these 2 seals. There's 4 screws here, there's another 3 here, and these 4 nuts. And there we go. So there's the lever mechanism. The regulator mechanism should be able to come out the top here. There we go, finally, one completely stripped door. So there's lots of wax oil in there, and obviously the whole lot has to be repainted, so there's a bit of work to do on that door on its own. These mechanisms now off the car, I've put all of the screws back in the right place and the nuts in. Some of these screws are really difficult to source because of the length and size that they are, so keeping the original ones, absolutely the right thing to do. I'll get them replated before putting them back on. You can see now that all of this exterior strip has created a load of parts. At the moment, they're not piled up very neatly or stored properly. So what I'm going to do is go through, organise all of these, and like I've started doing here, put all of the bits together so that they don't get lost, and label it all up. So with all the exterior chrome and the side glass out, this thing's beginning to look a lot more like a shell. Obviously, before I get anywhere near doing the roof and welding that panel in, I need to get all of the interior out. Before I get to that though, I've got to get the bonnet off, get the engine out, and get that away for a rebuild. Please join me next time, and that's what I'll be doing.